So a few weeks ago, I went to a Firewalk training. And I want to talk just a little bit today about that Firewalk training and what I learned and the process of me becoming just a little bit different through that. So I got started in that because I was looking up seminars to go to and found a Tony Robbins seminar, and in it, he apparently does firewalks. And I'd never even heard of a firewalk before, and so then I went and looked it up, and as I was looking up information about firewalks, I came across this training where he trains people to be able to do firewalks at seminars and trainings and coaching things, and I thought, well, this sounds interesting. Ever since I was a teenager, I've had a desire to be some sort of speaker. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll go to this. This would definitely give me, an edge. Not everyone does firewalks at their seminars. So it would give me kind of something to be a little bit different, right? So I signed up, and then I waited for months to be able to go to this. And in that time, I'd already looked up, some of the stuff that he talked about that we would do, because there's more than just firewalking at this training. There's lots of other things you do that are also can be challenging and difficult. And so I looked all those up, and then after I looked up some of them, they scared the living daylights out of me. No joke. And so then I started looking up the science behind all these things and how they could work and why they could work. And I went and watched videos and really over-prepared myself for these things because I was scared to death. And I had too long to think about it. And then the day finally came, and I loaded up, and I went to Delaware to go to this training. When I got there, that first day, I was beyond scared of the firewalk, which is funny because now that I've done it, it was probably the least scary out of all the elements we did. So there's the firewalk, and I knew we were going to do one that very first day. So I knew that by the end of the day, I had to do that. It wasn't something that happened like at the end of the week. This was a 4-day training, and we firewalked every day. So I knew that was coming that day. I had to be prepared that day, which in a way was good because I didn't have to think about it all week, wondering how horrible it was going to be or anything. So that first day, we started our training, and one of the first things we did that day was to break a board with our hands. Now, this was a 1-inch thick pine board. Someone later on asked me if it was real or if they had cut it special so that it would break more easily, like they do sometimes with kids, apparently, in some karate type classes. And I assured them that it was as real as it could be, that he had just gone to Home Depot, asked them to cut him these size boards, and they did. And there they were sitting in front of us. And on this board, we wrote a list of all the things that we were afraid to do or felt that we didn't have the ability to do. So I'm sitting there writing all my little things on there and, put them on. And then on the other side, we were supposed to write the things that we wanted. Maybe goals we had, things we wanted to be able to do, whatever it was, that we were not going to let hold us, that we were not going to be held back from anymore. So I put all those on there. And then he gave us a 10-minute training. That didn't seem very long, right? I've never done this before, ever in my entire life. I've never broken anything with my hands like that. And so I was kind of scared again. And you'll notice as I talk about these things we did, one thing will become very obvious. I was never the first person to volunteer to do anything. And I'll talk about that either a little bit later in this one, or I'll talk about that in my next talk, because I don't think I can get everything in one talk. It'll be forever and a day long. So I didn't volunteer first. I watched this the biggest person there, the biggest guy. He had the most muscles. He wasn't big as in fat. He was just, definitely built. And so he steps up and he goes first. So I watch him do it. I'm thinking in my head, well, yeah, but he's like Mr. Muscles over there. And then I watched as another person went up, and as I watched her do it, I thought to myself, well, she can do it, I can do it. So then I volunteered to go next. And so I got up there, and we'd practiced a couple of times the technique you need to use with your hands and arms, and we discussed how you need to, if you stop at that board, if you're just aiming for the board, there's a high chance you're not going to go through the board. Your hand is going to hit the board, and it is going to hurt if you do it with any sort of momentum or power at all. So we've been taught actually to aim for about, 4 or 5 inches below the board, because then your greatest amount of force and impact comes somewhere not at the end. When you actually get to the end of something, you've already started deaccelerating again. So you want your greatest, so when you hit that board, you want it to be at your greatest impact part, not towards the end. So you focus on hitting 5 inches below it, and you'll hit that board with your whole impact, right? Greatest force, greatest power. So that's what we were taught to do. And so I stepped up, and he taught us an interesting thing in this process, and I didn't realize that this was going to have so much power for me, and I'll talk a little bit about that later too. But he told us when we do things, he tells us to say yes when we get ready to do it, and we shout that out at the top of our lungs, and then do it, yes. And so I stepped up and I did my 1, and I did my hand pump, and my 2, and I did my hand pump. And on the third one, I yelled that yes, and I threw my hand through that like my life depended on it. And it broke. And here's the funny thing. I said the yes as loud as I could. My hand went right through that. And then I just stood there, and I looked at the board, and I'm like, it broke. And I was in shock that to a certain extent, there was a small part of me that wondered still if I was completely capable. There was almost a part of me that worried that I wasn't going to do it. But enough of me believed I was going to that I literally threw my force into it. I did not stop at the board. I went all the way through that board, and it felt great. And as I picked up my 2 broken pieces, and I walked back to my seat, and I sat there. And other people kept going, and I watched them, and I cheered them on, and I clapped for them. And every person in our group, we had 7 of us, broke the board that day. And as I sat there, though, the most incredible feeling came over me. This was something I honestly didn't know if I could do. I hadn't been necessarily scared of it. I had, besides the fact that it could hurt a little bit if my hand didn't go through it and I instead hit a board, it'd be kind of like hitting a wall a little bit. So I was a little bit worried about that, but, I thought, well, it'll be okay, whatever happens. But I really wanted to hit that board. I wanted to believe that I could break that board when I hit it. This was something that was important to me. And as I sat there and looked at those broken pieces and thought, wow, I could do it. I did have it in me. I am powerful enough to do things that sometimes seem impossible, or things that I don't understand, or things that I don't know for sure if I can do. I can do them. And at this moment, I then took all that energy and all that whatever, and I started focusing on the task of the Firewalk that was coming up in a few hours later that evening. And I kept telling myself, if I can break a board, I can Firewalk. But Firewalk seemed a lot scarier than breaking a board. And I remember I don't know if it was my lunch or my dinner break, but I remember calling my husband and saying, I am not sure if I can do this Firewalk. And he's like, well, no, you have to do the Firewalk. We paid money and sent you to Delaware to get this training. And of all the elements, the Firewalk was the one that I absolutely had to complete in order to get my certificate at the end. Some of the other ones could be failed, but that one can't be failed. That is the point. And so I was like, I don't know. I'm really nervous and worried about it. And he's like, you'll be fine. So I walked away with his knowing that he's expecting something of me, which is good. I think knowing that there's an actual expectation in life for you, that someone expects something from you, helps. And if no one expects anything from you, expect something from yourself then. That's what I've learned. So we get to the Firewalk that night, and that first night we didn't have to tend the fire. Somebody else tended it, and they had it all ready when we got there, and they had the coals all spread out, and there was the camera person there taking pictures. And I again did not go first, by the way. I watched as some people had already Firewalked before, and so I felt way more comfortable having them go again, and then other new people who had never Firewalked. I played it safe. I didn't go last, but I certainly didn't go first, okay? And when it came my turn, I was scared to death. And I walked up to that fire, and I'd seen how he did it, and he did his yes, 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 and then he'd walk. And he'd throw his hands in the air and do all this stuff. And basically that's, right, when you say that, it gets you pumped up and it gets you excited, and it tells your brain you're going to do it. And so I did that. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And then I just took that step and just started walking. You need to walk briskly when you walk across coals. No one wants to linger on them, right? So you walk briskly, and then it's done. And I got to the other side and I was like, my feet are still there. I didn't lose them. And I was super excited about that and was like, okay. And the interesting thing about the Firewalk is, so I told you that I had previously done some research on the different elements, right? Well, one of the things I looked up about the Firewalk is they said that the reason why people can Firewalk is that they dip their feet in water beforehand and there's ashes put over the top of the coals. And ashes aren't a good conductor of heat, and so then you're not as likely to get burned. And so, in my brain, I was thinking this was the case. Let me tell you what I had when I got there. So I get there and I'm looking for the bucket of water, right? And I said to someone, where's the bucket of water? And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, the one we dip our feet in before we walk across the coals. Like, we don't use a bucket of water. What are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, the science thing said that firewalkers use a bucket of water to put a layer of water between them and the coals. They're like, no. And I was like, oh, dear. So I was already scared and nervous, and it didn't help because I just learned that one of the things that science said this helps, we were not doing. Well, then I'm like looking at things because we all went and looked at the fire or the coals before we started walking on them. I'm like, where's the ashes at? It's funny how naive I was. And someone looked at me and they're like, what ashes are you talking about? And I'm like, they're supposed to sprinkle ashes on top because it's not a great conductor of heat. And they're like, there's no ashes, so we don't put ashes on top. And I was like, great, I'm going to burn my feet off today. So we were told to think of something symbolic for us while we walked across the fire. That could be as we stepped onto it, leaving behind the old us. That could be as we walked on those coals, each one of them being a barrier that we used to think we had in our lives, and that we were now crushing that barrier. We were stepping on it and just walking past it like it was no big deal. It could be when we stepped outside of the pit again, and the pit was about, 7 or 8 feet, okay? So you have to take 4 or 5 steps. So when you got outside of it, it could be that you're now entering the new you, the new life that you're going to do, filled with courage and enthusiasm and motivation, whatever it was. We were supposed to think about that. I will not lie. The first time I did it, I really didn't think about anything. As a matter of fact, I forgot the camera person was there, and I didn't even smile or do anything. I looked at the pictures, and I am like determined and focused. And so I just like trudged across there, and I didn't even think about anything. I got to the other side, and I felt amazing. Kind of like I felt earlier that day when I had broke the wood board. This feeling of, I can do more than I thought I could do. I can do things that seem impossible. I can do things that defy human reasoning at times. Like, I can do these things that are not easy. I can do hard things. And sometimes it's physically hard things. Sometimes it's emotionally or mentally hard things. But I came to the conclusion at that moment that I could do hard things. That moment of that firewalk was important for me. You see, I wasn't sure that day when I went to the firewalk that I was going to be able to complete this training, right? And there were some other things I wanted to do and some other trainings that he had later on, but I knew if I couldn't complete this one, I couldn't go to his other ones. This was the first step of it, to get this part of the training, and then there was extra training I could get that would be even better and would make me more marketable and make it so I could do more things in the future with companies and people and things. And I wanted to do that. I had this desire to do that, but at the same time, I didn't know if I could do the Firewalk. As I stepped off those coals, and then I felt great and I felt amazing, and he wanted us to firewalk at least one more time, just so we didn't just have one time. And so I went back over to the area and my turn came and I did it again. And this time I did it much more relaxed. I kind of had a pose that I did. I walked across and I smiled this time, and it was great. And I said my yes again. Well, when I got back to the hotel that night, I wrote the Firewalk instructor and I said, I now know I want to take your other trainings. I said, I wasn't sure I could do this. But now that I know I can, I'm all in. I want to take all of your other trainings. I want to do this. I want to become this. I want to help other people. I was super excited. And he wrote me back and he goes, I always knew you could do this. He goes, I had no doubts. I'm like, well, that's great, but I did, and so, so that was kind of my pivotal moment. Like, I realized that if I could do that, there really wasn't anything else at this training that was going to get me, and I could do all other things. And so I was good to go, and I was excited. So the one thing I want to talk about before I move on to anything else from this Firewalk is that word yes. When he would have us say that, and he told us, like, later on in the week as we did things, he said, find something that means something to you. And one of the people, I found it interesting, their word that gave them power and strength to move forward and do something that was hard for them was team. And team to them represented everyone in the room. It represented God, Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, everybody, their family members, like even people who weren't there, angels, didn't matter. That was their team. And so when they said team, like in their heads, they were picturing all these people rooting for them and helping them and encouraging them. And that was their power word. I think that's a super powerful word, by the way. I had never thought about that until they had said that. And I thought to myself, but it's true, isn't it? Wouldn't all those people be cheering for us? Wouldn't God want us to succeed? Wouldn't our family want us to succeed? All these different things, of course. And the other people that are there in the room, they all want you to succeed. I have never wanted some people to succeed so bad in my life that when I watched someone who was struggling with one of the things, because somewhere during that week, every one of us ended up with at least one thing that was beyond what we thought we could do. And as you'd watch some of them struggle, and some of them would be crying, trying to complete them, and then they do it. And the excitement I got from watching someone overcome something that was so hard for them was almost as amazing as actually doing it myself and overcoming my own fears. And so I loved it. And the word that really was powerful for me was that yes that he taught us in the beginning. And I thought about that a little bit because I wondered why yes was so important to me. So one night after we'd firewalked and done the day's events, I started thinking about that word yes. And I realized that the reason why that word was so powerful was because it was a commitment word. When I said yes, I was committing to something. I'm a person that when I'm committed to something, I really get committed to something. I often will think about something for a long time before finally committing to it, because once I commit, I truly believe I have to follow through with it. So it becomes a serious thing. I don't enter into agreements or commitments lightly. I will say no before I will say yes and back out. So I was kind of apprehensive a few times about that. But when I said yes, it meant I was all in and I was completely committed and ready to go and excited. And so I also found that in a strange way, it was me giving myself permission to succeed. This is really important for me because as I went throughout that week, I realized that I have a bigger problem with succeeding than with failing. Failing's not a big deal to me. Succeeding, on the other hand, is. For some odd reason, I think that when I succeed, that some other poor soul, if they don't succeed, then I feel bad that I succeeded and they didn't. And I even thought back to my childhood. I was 4 years older than the next sibling, which means everyone else was even more years than that. And as a result, I was quite a bit ahead of any of my siblings. And so when we started playing video games and then things like basketball and other sports, because I had 4 years on everybody, and I was way faster and I could do everything way easier, and I was taller, for a few years at least than anybody else. Sometimes my brothers and sisters didn't want to play with me if I kept winning. So I got into this weird habit of I'd only win like once or twice for every 3 or 4 rounds, and then I'd let them win the other ones so they'd keep playing with me because I didn't want to have to play by myself. And so this became a habit, and this habit has continued with me as an adult. I will play games, and if someone starts complaining about how they don't really like that game because they don't win very much against me, I start losing that game intentionally. Sometimes I have cards in my hand. I could win at any time. And pretty soon I have 3 cards in my hand. I could win with all 3 of them, and I don't. I just keep holding them, hoping the other person is going to hurry and win. I realized that when I said yes, I was giving myself permission to succeed. One of the big things we talked about, there was that quote by, I think it's Marianne Williamson, or maybe it's Marianne Williams, about how it's not our light that scares us, it's not our darkness that scares us, it's our light that scares us. It's our successes that scare us, and how, we are a child of God, and when we succeed, we give other people permission to do the same. And as I listened to that poem, or that thought, I guess it's not really a poem, as I listened to that thought, it struck me really hard that when I succeed, other people have the opportunity to either rise to match me, or they don't have to. But I don't do anyone any good by failing. I don't help them to become any better. I don't help them to become any stronger. I don't help them to do anything. Now, there might be certain circumstances, when you're a parent and you're raising your kids. Of course, you've got way more ability, and if they don't ever get a chance to have any success, then they'll just feel downtrodden, right? So there's like a few things, but I realized that me constantly doing that wasn't helping anybody else, and it wasn't helping me either. And so in that moment, me saying yes became symbolic for my entire life. It became symbolic of me saying, yes, it's okay to succeed even if someone else doesn't. It's okay for me to succeed and to raise the bar by which people will succeed, or to raise the bar. It could be in the workplace, it could be in my family, it could be financially, it could be, who cares, whatever it was that was holding me back from wanting to succeed because I was afraid so-and-so would feel such and such. I realized I'm not the type of person to gloat and to carry on about my successes. I'm not a bad sport when it comes to that kind of stuff. If that's you, maybe you should reconsider how you do that. But that wasn't me. When I succeeded, it was just me doing my best, and I just happened to win. It wasn't me trying to put anyone else down. And so it occurred to me, finally, that I needed to give myself permission to succeed. And that was very powerful as well. So that yes became an important moment in my life. The moment I realized what yes really stood for. And so I would go throughout the rest of that week. The next day, we had the glass walking. Glass walking is not as scary as it seems either. And again, I said yes, and then I stepped into that 6-7 foot pile of glass, and I started walking across it. And there's certain things you do so you're safe, and he told us the same thing on that, like find something either the glass represents, or you stepping into it represents, or you stepping out of it represents. Find something that represents that you can then carry throughout your life. Like, what are you walking for? What is your purpose? And so for each of these things, I set goals, and I set certain thought processes into my mind, and focused on certain things for these things. And it became a very enlightening experience for me as a result. And then everyone was able to glass walk as well. Like, it's really not that hard. No one got cut. It's pretty rare for someone to get cut. So it's actually a really safe practice. He'd always tell us we practice the safest practices possible for all these things. The goal is not to make anyone actually get hurt. The elements are scary enough all by themselves and risky enough without making them any scarier or any riskier. So we try to make them as good as possible, as safe as possible. And so that was kind of what I learned. Like, we want to set people up for success. I thought that was a cool part of these elements, was you want to set people up for success. We don't want to set people up to fail. We don't want to make it so hard they can't possibly ever do it. We want to set them up for success. So Then we get into one of the days we did, what's it called? A trust fall. Now, I have a true fear of falling. I used to think I was afraid of heights. One day I learned I was afraid of falling, not heights. I have no problem being up high in the air as long as I think I can't fall. As soon as I think I can fall, I become panicked. And so I got to it was my turn, and I waited a long time for that one. By the way, I was not the first person for the glass walk, and I was not the first person for the trust fall. That thing scared the living daylights out of me. And when I got up there, I realized that those people were sitting like 4 feet below me, and I was too. What we did was we stood away from the people, and the people below us had all of their hands interspersed, so that like one person's hand to be here, and then another person's, and then the first person's hand to be here, and then that person's would be next to theirs again, and we went all the way down the line like that. And then you were facing away from them, so your back was towards them, and then you fell on 3. Right? So you said all these words first. You had to make sure everyone was ready. You don't want to fall before then. And then when it's time, then you say you're like 1, 2, yes, and then fall or whatever, right? And so that's what I did. And then I just had to make myself do it. And I found in all these situations, it is way more painful physically and emotionally and mentally and spiritually if you keep debating them, if you almost do it and then back out, if you keep doing that becomes harder and harder and harder to act every time you don't do it. And so I learned really fast that if you're going to do it, you said 1, 2, yes, and you did it as fast as you could, and you didn't think. You just did it. And so that's how I got through most of these events, was I literally just, as soon as I said yes, I did it. There was no debating, no thinking about the consequences, no nothing. I just did it, and then it was over, and then I felt fantastic when I was done. So I did the same thing with the trust fall. I said 1, 2, 3, and I arched my back, and I went flying backwards. And the people caught me, and I was super happy, right? And then we got to the next day, was and by the way, we firewalked, right? Each of those nights, we firewalked and did our stuff again. And we actually started becoming fire tenders. That meant we built our own fires because we had to know how to do it, right? In order to have a training and have people come to our seminar or training or our coaching or whatever, we had to build our own fires. And so we did that. And and then we walked on our own fires. So we were pretty motivated to do it right? He gave us instructions. He told us how to, but he didn't help us. We were like, well, the first day he helped us. Later on, in future ones, he did not help us. We had to do our own. So we were in groups when we would do them. And so we got to build our own fires. I found out that was a very hot experience. That fire, whew. There are parts of that fire that are like 1,200 degrees, and I was just sweating. I drank like a whole gallon of water in a 2-hour, well, less than a 2-hour period of time, and I didn't have to go to the bathroom because I was sweating it all out so fast. And so I learned that's a very hot experience, and I learned that's a very cool experience, being the tender of the fire, having that responsibility in my hands, and realizing you have to have a certain respect for the fire, right? The fire can get you good if you're not careful. And I learned to have respect for the fire and for walking on that fire. And so that was a cool experience all of its own. And then, so we did that again each day. And then one of the days we got to do the arrow breaking and the rebar bending with our neck. Now what happens is you put that, if you go right above your collarbone in your neck, there's that spot that's like a hole, and you can like push your finger quite a ways through that hole. You're not on any of your, your esophagus or anything. You can't feel any of that, right? It's like literally below that and just right above your collarbone. It's a really tender spot. If you've ever gotten hit there, ever poked there, or just pushed there right now, it's a really tender spot. Well, that is where the arrow and the rebar go. And so again, he talked to us about it. He showed us the safe way to do it. He told us that this is one of those things that you just have to be all in for, and you just do it. And he said it will be uncomfortable. when you get ready to do it. And that was the first one we had where he told us it might be a little uncomfortable at first or even a tiny bit painful. And here's what he said. If you just do it and you push past the discomfort, you will only have about 1.5 seconds of discomfort and it will be over. If you start to do it halfway and then it's uncomfortable and so then you pull back, then you'll have to keep doing that and it will get sorer and sorer every time you do that. Until pretty soon it's a painful experience. So he said, when you get ready to push, just do it. Just take your leg and push it forward and slam right through that thing into the wall. And so I remember when my turn came, I was nervous again. We had a little goal and we put it right above. If you've seen the video of me doing it, we put it right above our arrow. And he would tell us to focus on that goal. That is what we were going to reach. When we burst through that arrow, we hit the wall, we were going to hit our goal. And so I'd put a certain goal there that was important to me, that I wanted to achieve. And then I stuck that arrow, and we use archer's arrows, not hunting arrows. There's a difference. Hunting arrows are significantly sharper than an archer's arrow. So there's a little bit of a difference there. And so we use those. And so I put that right there. And once again, that word yes became important to me. So I would say 1, 2, yes! And I thrust my leg forward and I broke that arrow. And my arrow went breaking into like 4 pieces. I like shattered that arrow. I didn't think about it and I didn't stand there and do it 10 times because I hate pain. I realized, for me, as he said, it will be uncomfortable at first. I thought about how many things in my life were uncomfortable when I first started doing them. Things I now love to do. How many of them were uncomfortable? Playing sports was uncomfortable, having to do it in front of all those people. How about when I started playing an instrument? That was uncomfortable. It was even painful sometimes because when you have to get your mouth in shape to be able to play for more than 10 minutes at a time, that's uncomfortable. New jobs are uncomfortable, usually for at least a week or 2. All these different experiences you can have in life, marriage, having kids, it doesn't matter what it is. Life is full of discomfort. And if you stop every time you feel just a little bit of discomfort, you will never get anything you want in life. And so that's how I thought about it. I thought, okay, I just need to hurry and push through this. None of this backing out and going back and forth. You don't want to be double-minded when you do these elements. It's really important to be all in, all committed, ready to go. Okay, so then we got to the, and when I got done doing that one, I felt super good again. In every one of these, I felt super good. When I got done doing that one, I thought, it was another thing that I worried about just a little bit. Like, could I really do this? Would I suddenly freeze up and not be able to move forward? Would the pain or the discomfort get to me so that I would refuse to go and break it? Would I give up? Would I sit down? And I didn't want to look like an idiot. And so, I think that helped push me too. And so, but each time I did it, it made it easier to do the next thing because each time I did something that was a little bit challenging, I'd think to myself, well, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. I can probably do something else as well, And so it literally became easier to do the next thing. So after that, we actually did a rebar bending, which you put the rebar in the same exact spot in your neck as you did for the arrow breaking. And then for the rebar bending, though, it's a little bit unique. You have to use a partner. And he also, when he does this, sometimes if he has married couples, which he sometimes does seminars for married couples and stuff, if he has a married couple, he'll have them do it together because there's a lot of symbolism that can be done in the rebar bending. And he'll have them, because when you do it, you and your partner, it doesn't matter how big either one of you are. One of you can be 350 pounds and one of you can be 100 pounds, and that doesn't matter at all. Size doesn't matter. Strength doesn't matter. What matters is that you work together and you both put forth an effort, and that one of you doesn't overpower the other one of you. So whoever's the stronger one has the burden placed on them to make sure that they don't overpower the other person. So I had a partner. She was significantly shorter than me, although she was a rock. She's probably 10 times stronger than me. And we got together and we stood there, and once again, she said, I said, I just need you to say 1, 2, yes. And she's like, okay, well then you're going to be the person to count us off and you do it. And I was like, okay, because I found out yes was important for me. If we do that, somehow all my fear goes flying out the window when I say yes. So we got up there, we did it. I said 1, 2, we both started pushing. And at first, nothing was happening. I realized I had like gone forward too hard and I needed to let up just a little bit. And then she matched it, and we were able to bend the rebar. And once it starts to bend, that rebar bends just like a knife through warm butter. Like it just whoosh. Okay, it's not very hard at all, actually. And it's not painful. And so anyway, like he said, he uses that both for like marriage things and for just partners and work and leadership things that you need to work together. That it's not so much important like who's better or who's stronger. What's important is that you're in it together for each other. And so we were able to complete that. And then that final night, we did 108 firewalks. And what that meant is we took, so there was 3 groups. Each of them tended their own fire. Each of them made a bed of coals that are 7 or 8 feet long. And then we put a space, so there'd be a bed of coals, some grass, a bed of coals, some grass, and a bed of coals. We put them in a circle, and we walked around that till we equaled 108 times of being on one of those fire beds. Which means we walked around it like, 39 or 40 times or something. Whatever that comes to, I'm not a mathematician. Maybe 36 times, I don't know. Anyway, so we walked around that. And then, which was something I wouldn't have thought I could have done on the first day. Again, that's crazy to just keep walking. You would think that your feet would get super hot and you would be burning. Again, just a powerful reminder that I could do things that I didn't realize I could do. I'm going to talk about a couple of these other things that I've kind of glossed over in the next one. I just didn't want this one to be, 5 hours long. And so I'm going to talk about some of these in the next one. I'm going to go back and talk about an element that day before the 108 firewalks that happened, and what I learned from that moment, and what I learned from doing something that was super interactive and hands-on, and about acting and losing fear. And so stay tuned for the next one as well. And thanks for listening, and make it a great day.